Hi, this is the video lecture on class inequality. So before you watch this video lecture, I want you to take a few minutes to watch the wealth inequality in the U.S. video found in this unit's course material. Students typically respond very well to this video. It's very powerful in terms of illustrating the degree of stratification we have in the U.S. And I think we all kind of intuitively know that there's class inequality in the U.S., that some people have a lot of money and stuff and other people don't have as much money or as much stuff. Now, I'm going to, in this video lecture, be contrasting kind of the mainstream explanations for why we have this stratification with those that are more sociological. So to start with kind of the mainstream explanations for this inequality, I want to refer back to a concept that we talked about in our introduction to inequality topic, that of hegemonic ideology. So if you'll recall, we said that hegemonic ideology is a belief system that justifies inequality. So I mentioned that we are going to be looking at the hegemonic ideology associated with various types of inequality for the remainder of the semester. As it relates to class inequality in the U.S., we're talking about achievement ideology. So the hegemonic ideology associated with class inequality is achievement ideology. Achievement ideology helps to legitimate or justify the stratification that we see. Achievement ideology is essentially the idea that anyone who works hard enough can succeed. So basically, the idea here is that because everyone has a chance to succeed, where you end up in life is a product of your own effort or lack thereof. Going along with this idea is that the reason some groups do not succeed in life is because they do not hold the right values. So if the assumption here is that if they held the right values, they would be able to achieve social mobility. They just need to work harder, they need to value education more, make better decisions, etc. Now, sociologists tend to view achievement ideology as problematic. Sociologists adhere more to the structural explanations of class inequality described in your textbook. This is the idea that, generally speaking, the reason we see so much inequality in our society is because due to the structure of society, some groups have greater access to resources and opportunities as compared to others. Groups that have access to these things are going to experience more success. So the education system is a great example of how the structure of society leads to class inequality, and your textbook does a good job at describing how this happens, so make sure you understand this part of the chapter. There's an extremely unequal access to resources, meaning that some people are going to have to work a whole heck of a lot harder than others in order to succeed. Essentially, we don't live in an even playing field as a result of the structure of society, which ultimately leads to class stratification. Now, something else to consider in terms of the structure of society is that even low-wage jobs are scarce. So people who want to work may not be able to, especially considering the current state of our economy. Again, that is something that kind of goes against this quintessential articulation of achievement ideology. Furthermore, because of the way our society is organized, structured, not everyone can succeed. So think about this. I want to do a little bit of a thought experiment here. So imagine the government stumbled across this miraculous mineral, we'll call it Achievacil, and if ingested, it makes everybody super hardworking, super ambitious, just great people, bright overall. And let's say because it's such an amazing thing, the government decides to put it in our water to put it in our water supply, and after, which they do with fluoride, if you are unaware of that, and then after a week's time, we wake up and everybody in our country, in the U.S., is ambitious and hardworking and bright. What would the consequences of that be? Well, you have to think, we still need people to do what folks in the sociology of work organizations refer to as dirty work, right? We still need people to, for example, collect our garbage, or to work at fast food establishments. And so even if we were all kind of a part of the superior group of people, the structure of our society would still need some to occupy those lower rungs of the occupational prestige scale. We can't all be doctors and lawyers and professors. Now, lastly, in terms of how the structure of society creates this unequal access to resources and opportunities, we have to consider the nature of our economy, which is described very well in the reading A Game of Life and Death by Schwabe. So the idea here is that we live in a capitalist system, and this economic model, businesses compete with one another to accumulate profit. Now, one of the major advantages of competition is that it leads to innovation and can be highly motivating. But ultimately, capitalism is centered on the accumulation of profit, even over providing for basic human needs. Now, it's important to note here that these are just the rules of the game, right? If one business can sell their product more cheaply than another business, all else being equal, the business with the lower price point is going to thrive while the other goes out of business. So when we talk about stratification, or whenever the economy experiences a crisis, there's a tendency to want to talk about individual actors as being bad or as greedy. Now, while there may be some greed associated with these profits, ultimately it stems from the structure of our economic model. At its core, capitalism is about profit accumulation, and without that accumulation of profit, the system doesn't work. I want you to watch a video that I've placed in the materials folder of Unit 3 that addresses this, titled Crisis of Capitalism. Now, one way to accumulate this profit is to keep wages as low as possible. Without getting too technical, I want to mention that in terms of production, there are two types of capital. There are two inputs, so to speak. You have fixed capital and variable capital. Now, much as the name suggests, fixed capital is fixed, right? It's hard. There's not a whole lot of leeway or wiggle room when it comes to those inputs. This is things like land, infrastructure, including computers, right? People engaging in the production process generally have to pay whatever it is that is asked of them for those items. And then variable capital varies. Labor is what comprises variable capital. And so this pursuit of profit incentivizes downward pressure on wages. One of the reasons why capitalists are able to exert this downward pressure is because we have a reserve army of labor in the U.S. So basically, the idea is that there are more laborers than there are actual jobs. Now, this creates a dynamic where people will perform undesirable labor for extremely low wages, because if they resist, there's someone in line waiting to take their place. It gives employers powers to keep wages as low as possible. Now, there are many other facets to capitalism as an economic model, but what I've tried to do here is to give you a sense of how the structure of the economy creates this stratification, and how the stratification is not purely as a result of greedy, evil capitalists, but rather the rules of the game. Now, one last thing about class inequality. All of what you're reading and what I've said in this video lecture, this is not meant to suggest that individuals have zero chances of experiencing social mobility. They certainly do. But it does suggest that mobility often involves more than just hard work, like achievement ideology would lead us to believe. This is a great example of where that both and thinking comes into play, something that we talked about in Unit 1. It's not either individual hard work or the structure of society that's important to consider here. It's both individual effort and the structure of our society. Okay, that's it for now. Please let me know if you have any questions. Have a good day.